What's going on, everybody? It's Nick Kosko with On3 Sports, getting ready for the NCAA Wrestling Championships here in 2024. Kansas City, the host city this year. With me right now is Shawn Kenney of ESPN. He's one of the biggest wrestling guys you'll ever meet across the networks, of course. And Shawn, I'm pleased to talk to you, obviously. And then we look ahead to this upcoming tournament, the best 3 days in March, as people like to call it. You know, it seems like just yesterday it was just the middle of November. We're getting through the preseason. We're getting through the first couple of dual meets, and now it all comes down to the 33 wrestlers across all 10 weight classes. I can only imagine how excited you are to get to Kansas City.
Yeah, I'm pumped. I'm like you. Thanks for the opportunity. And, man, thank you for everything you do for the sport. I enjoy following you and seeing you cover the sport like you do. But, yeah, it feels like we should be in Vegas at the Keene or maybe the Midlands. But, yeah, March is here. The time flies, and I think a really captivating tournament coming up. There's so many different individual storylines. Maybe not necessarily who's going to win the team title this year, but who's going to walk away with a team medal. So, I mean, lots of different storylines that intertwine, and that's what makes this tournament so great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we can actually start right there. Penn State is the overwhelming team favorite this year. They could have 5, who knows, maybe in a historic 6 national champions across these 10 weight classes. But let's start with the Nittany Lions. I was out in Maryland the other week when they pretty much ran through Big Tens, and that was even without Carter Starachi, their 3-time national champion, 174 pounds. But you have these new young bucks coming up, like Braden Davis at 125, winning a Big Ten title. Mitchell Messenbrink has been unbelievable this year as well. Just what's your general sense of Penn State and how they've been able to do it? Once again, they lost Shane Van Ness so early in the season. Never got to see him this year after his third place finish in 2023. And obviously, Starachi doesn't wrestle in the Big Ten tournament now 2 weeks ago. What do you make of Penn State this year? And now, obviously, I mean, maybe they can get the team score history, rewrite the history books with the team score in Kansas City. But what have you seen from Penn State all season long, and just why they've been able to reload once again?
Yeah, what impresses me with Penn State, obviously it starts with coaching and what Cale and his staff are able to do no matter what. I mean, yes, they bring in these great athletes, yet they continue to execute. There's never any letdown. And then you take an injury like Van Ness, well, it's next man up mentality, and Penn State's always been able to do that. And then you add the influx of young wrestlers that they bring in, and it's so impressive with what Cale does year in, year out. And you mentioned a couple of them with Davis and Messenbrink. How about that battle with Hamady for the Big Ten championship? That might have been one of the more entertaining bouts, just as a sheer spectator watching Hamady jump out to the big lead, and then no panic. Here comes Messenbrink right back at him, and he ends up winning in a thriller. So, I mean, it's a combination. And what I appreciate about Penn State is they win with the big names. Obviously, they have a couple looking for their 4th national championship. They bring in the transfers who don't miss a beat. They seamlessly, it seemed like, adapt to Cale's ways. Bernie Truax was a wrestler that I always enjoyed watching out at Cal Poly, and I'm excited to see him make his run. How's he do with Penn State? Now, would this be the year he wins the national championship? And then these freshmen. And for Penn State, it has to feel good to have a 25-pounder that's going to score some points for you at the national tournament. So, yeah, it's a complete package. And what I appreciate with Cale, he's so humble. He's one of those guys, as a media member, it's tough to talk to him because he's so dialed into what he's got built in that room. And, man, they just do not show any signs of slowing down. And you're right. The Iowa point total could be at serious jeopardy this weekend if things go like they feel they could for Penn State, and maybe the largest margin victory we've seen. But it is 3 days in March. You don't know. You can add it all up on paper, and, yeah, Penn State, but they have to execute, and we'll see if they can.
Yeah, they absolutely could. Again, I'm also excited to see what Starachi does coming off the injury, whatever the severity was in that last dual meet. You mentioned 125, how Penn State supposedly broke that quote-unquote curse, right? They finally get a Big Ten champion at the lower weights. Now, they've had success at that weight class in the past, but not within the last almost 10 years at this point. So now you look ahead to 125. They get a Big Ten champion, Braden Davis. He's the number 1 seed, but then everyone's been talking about 125 all season long, not just in the Big Ten, but across the entire country in an absolutely insane weight. It seems like we had a new number 1 every single week. What was your biggest takeaway from 125 pounds throughout the entire year? And then I personally, I have no idea what to make of the bracket.
Well, the number 1 takeaway is don't be ranked number 1. That was the first thing during the course of the season. But, yeah, I mean, you could of all the brackets, obviously, I think it's been talked about a lot. This is the one that you could literally throw a dart and make a strong case for, okay, this is my pick 'em. And yeah, Davis earned the number 1 seed. He's going to have the target on his back. But, keep an eye in the middle of the pack. Ramos as a 4 seed. Ayala, maybe flying under the radar a little bit for Iowa as a 3 seed. Dean Peterson's a guy that I've kept an eye on. Yeah, I mean, you could literally, and you know this well, you can make a case 1 through 15, and I think you'd have a shot at having a national champion. So this is going to be wide open. I don't think we've seen a weight like this in recent years where you really do have a double-digit number of wrestlers who could walk away with a national championship.
No, not at all. And again, you could just pick. You just mentioned throw a dart right at the bracket. Maybe you hit the number 22 seed, and all of a sudden that's your guy who's going to win the national title as well. We'll kind of go in a little bit of order right here. 133 pounds, another loaded weight class, one that seems to be wide open. I know there's guys at the top like a Dayton Fix, who's a 3-time finalist, obviously a 4-time All-American from Oklahoma State. Vito is there as well, last year's national champion from Cornell. Ryan Crookham has been unbelievable this year as a redshirt freshman for Lehigh. He's the 2 seed. You go down the list, this weight class is pretty deep. It just seems like Fix and Crookham are on a collision course now, for being a Jersey guy and being, covering Rutgers for so long. Dylan Shulver stood out to me as well. He's in the title picture now. And then you can't forget about Vito, despite the fact that he's lost to Crookham a couple times this year. But we just go down the list, Shawn, and then 133, arguably probably almost just as deep as 125 pounds. Is that your takeaway too?
Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. And one of the neat aspects about this past week is Rock and I have been able to get on a lot of Zoom calls. We've been pretty much living on the computer talking to coaches and athletes. And we had a chance to talk to both Crookham and Vito. And I'll tell you what, I am really impressed with Ryan Crookham, not just what he does on the mat and obviously what we saw taking care of Vito in the championship match at the EIWA, but just how he conducted himself on the interview. Very mature, very confident. One of those young guys that you have a lot of confidence in that he's going to perform when the spotlight's the brightest. And, when you look at Vito, we kind of laughed after we got done with the interview. He seems to be enjoying maybe that people are writing him off because he's been knocked off twice. He just seemed to have that recharged look about him. I mean, it's been a heck of a run for Vito with what he's done, not only winning the championship last year, but then carrying over the success on the world's level. And, that takes a toll on the body, both physically and mentally. And the picture I got after that conversation with Cornell and Vito is get ready. You're going to see the best of Vito here in a couple of days.
He's one of the superstars out there, former national champions in the field. And speaking of former national champions, there's a lot of them, it seems like, over at 174 as well. We'll get to that in a second. So I wanted to get to 165s. I feel like 165, once you get to the middle weights now, 157, absolutely loaded. Of course, Levi Haynes is the favorite from Penn State, but 165 always stood out to me. I know you like, I know your coverage with the Big 12 as well, so I'm sure you're very familiar with these guys, Keegan O'Toole and David Carr, of course. These guys have been going at it. They've wrestled 4 times. Could see part 5 in the semifinals. They're 2-2 against each other in their careers. But O'Toole is your 2-time NCAA champion from Mizzou. David Carr, I mean, I have him finishing 3rd. I think O'Toole is going to win this weight class again, get his 3rd title. But that's a collision course for the for the semifinals. And on the flip side, we mentioned Messenbrink before. He's the 2 seed. But this weight class, so deep, so talented. I mean, I got to imagine you're really looking forward to possibly seeing O'Toole and Carr once again, just even get to the NCAA finals here in 2024.
Yeah, Nick, I was so pumped to see him at the end of the regular season. I hopped on a midnight red-eye flight from Raleigh after the ACCs just to get back to watch that duel, and unfortunately it never happened because of the flu bug that was running rampant through the Missouri room. But the good news for the Tigers, they're healthy, and yeah, I mean, this is the matchup that everybody wants to see. I can't believe Carr is a 4 seed. That stunned me a little bit. So to see those two go at it in the semis is going to be a Friday night treat for everybody. And then, yeah, Messenbrink definitely deserved one of those top seeds with the way he's wrestled. Huge win against Hamity, as I talked about. I think that side there with, Julian Ramirez at Cornell, Olenek of Oklahoma State, I think is a guy that could make some noise as well that might slow down Messenbrink, but we'll wait and see. But yeah, without a doubt, star-studded, top half of this bracket, Carr, O'Toole, if they should meet on a Friday night. And yeah, Carr won the first 2. O'Toole's won the last 2. it makes for good television, that's for sure.
That it does. O'Toole could make some history with his third national title and be on the track to be the next four-time, or at least that's the way I see it. 174, I
And real
mentioned
quick, how
before.
about the job of Brian Smith? I mean,
Oh,
sometimes
absolutely.
I just don't think he gets the credit he deserves. I mean, they're always sending the entire fleet to nationals. He has a chance to do it in his state. I think Missouri, if they're healthy, and they looked healthy at the Big 12s, no kidding, they were without 6 starters late in the year, injuries and a real bad flu bug. So if that stuff is behind them, Missouri's going to be right there for a team trophy.
And just to piggyback off that, do you think Missouri, because again, that they've been so consistent? I know they've had stars in the past couple of years, and in the past decade. Jaden Cox is the first one that always comes to mind from Mizzou, being a 3-time national champion himself. Do you feel like Mizzou somehow just always goes under the radar when we come to this tournament every single season? Because everyone talks about Penn State, Iowa, Oklahoma State. Who's gonna catch the Nittany Lions? Who else is out there? Is an ACC team going to be, have this breakout campaign? We talk about Cornell a lot as well. Do you think Mizzou just somehow just flies under the radar every year?
Yeah, some reason they do. I mean, obviously the diehard wrestling, they don't fly under the radar, but it seems like when we get to the national stage and people are asking me, oh, Missouri's that good? Yeah, Missouri's that good. I mean, they have legitimately been a team trophy contender for several years now. And with the Askren Academy and everything down there, Brian just, he has that thing cooking, and they have a lot of in-pride wrestling as far as in-state, guys that wrestled in the state of Missouri their high school years, and they want to stay there. They want to have that Tiger pride. So he has a really good thing going. And I've always said Missouri, Arizona State out west, just because they don't get the media exposure. There's one that, when you see the Sun Devils in March, Zeke's going to have them cranked up, and they're always in the conversation. And they just don't get a lot of coverage because of their location. Now, that should change with them moving into the Big 12, but Missouri and Arizona State have always been the two sleepers that, I hate to use the word sleeper because they're not, but if you're not inside that wrestling world, you just don't hear a lot about those two, and that's wrong because, man, they've been as good as they come.
Yeah, I feel like you just have to wait until the postseason with the individuals say, oh, yeah, Missouri does, they go 10 deep in their entire lineup, and they can have potentially, if everything breaks right, 10 All-Americans, something absurd like that. So,
and Arizona State is healthy now, too. Keep an eye on their two lightweights with Figueroa and Vasquez. Those two guys are banged up. Obviously, we know about Parco and Schultz at heavyweight. They are healthy at the right time, so I'm expecting big things from the Sun Devils.
Yeah, you mentioned Figueroa down at 125 in that landmine of a bracket. So who knows? Maybe he ends up being the national champion when it's all said and done. At 174, I feel like we know what is going to happen, but then again, we don't, because there's plenty of injuries. We mentioned the Srirachi injury before, didn't wrestle at Big Tens. And with the new criteria, new matrix, whatever numbers we want to crunch in terms of seeding, Srirachi was the prime example of being penalized for medically defaulting out of a conference tournament. He got the at-large bid because, of course, he's going to get it. Number 1 all year, 3-time champion, hasn't lost in 3 years, but he does get the 9 seed. And on that top side of the bracket, Shawn, it's number 1 Mekhi Lewis, who he knows very well, also a former national champion, and number 4 Shane Griffith. That's Virginia Tech and Michigan, respectively. Griffith just won the national title for Stanford a couple of years ago as well. We're looking at a Srirachi Mekhi Lewis quarterfinal, and then Srirachi having to face Griffith in the semis just to get to the finals. I think he's going to win, Shawn, but I don't know about you. What did you make of this draw for this bracket, which is absolutely loaded, especially on that top side?
Yeah, the top side is unreal. I mean, you hit it right on the button there, the way you broke it down with what you have. Mekhi Lewis, what he has meant to Virginia Tech, Nick, you just can't, there's not enough adjectives to describe, winning the program's first national title, coming so close, as you alluded. It just seems like when March rolls around, Mekhi Lewis is wrestling his best. Tony Roby's done an outstanding job with that program in Blacksburg, and Mekhi has been the main weapon behind it. And I will say this, watching, we cover the Friday night duels, watching a lot of the ACCs, Mekhi's offense looks really good this year. He's always been so tough to score on. His counter offense has always been really good. He would often talk with me, it's frustrating. No one's ever shooting on me because they know what's coming. Well, it seems like his offense has opened up. So Mekhi, legitimate number 1. And then you talked about it. Michigan sitting in there with Shane Griffith, just quietly saying, don't forget about me in that 4 spot. I would not want to be in that top half of the bracket. I don't know how it's going to emerge. Starachi seems determined. He said, I love his response on social media. I'll wrestle anybody, anytime, anywhere. If I have to wrestle 3 guys a day to get it done, I'm going to do it. That's
I'll wrestle all 32 guys.
He'll wrestle everyone. And he's going to have to. And obviously he's the guy that can pull it off. But I really like what I'm seeing from Mekhi Lewis this year. It just his offense. He's always been defensive. He seems to be, looking very, very good at a number 2 for him as far as national championships go.
You mentioned Lewis and having covered him for a while, and of course you go through your ACC Friday night duels and seeing maybe a healthier version of him this year. Does anything stand out about him this year compared to the past couple of years? Because, of course, not that he came out of nowhere, but he had to pull off some upsets and obviously took out Vincenzo Joseph in that first national title back in 2019. There was some time off in between with the canceled tournament, his injuries, but he got back to the finals. He ran into the buzzsaw that was Starachi, and then last year he couldn't get to the final stage as well. Is there something different about Mekhi Lewis this year than compared to the last years following that first national title?
Yeah, nothing so much different, but I would say maybe the little nuance with him has been the offense. It seems to be a little bit more offensive focus, offensive driven, not waiting for that opponent to shoot. And he's always been so opportunistic with his reshot and counter offense. So very minute. You don't need to change much up when you're a Mekhi Lewis, but that would be the only thing I've noticed. And then he's relaxed. He's having fun. You talk to a lot of these veterans when they realize it's their final go around, 6 or 7 year guys. And, I think the reality sets in and they're just going to let it fly. They can come into it relaxed. I mean, you look at what he's already accomplished and what he's meant to that Virginia Tech wrestling room. I think you're going to see a free-flying Mekhi Lewis, and that's good television and good for the wrestling world.
Shawn Kenney of ESPN with me here on On3 Sports. A couple more for you, Shawn. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about Aaron Brooks, who is also going for his 4th national title. We talk about the rarefied air and these guys actually getting 4 national titles on their resume. We saw 2 guys go for it last year. Yanni Diakomahalis, the one to get it. Spencer Lee fell short. But now you got 2 Penn State guys going for it. But it seems like everyone's focused on Starachi right now because of the injury. But then everyone's like, oh, yeah, Aaron Brooks, yeah, he's going to win. And then as of the last, let's say, 2 to 3 weeks, there's been more buzz about Trent Hidley from NC State. The two have met before in a national final. He basically followed him to 197 this year, for lack of a better term. You've seen Trent up close and personal. Can Trent Hidley get it done and knock off what seems to be an unbeatable Aaron Brooks? To me, Brooks is still the man. He's going to do it. But if anybody can do it, it seems like Hidley's the guy who's going to be able to do it.
Yeah, Hidley looks the true part of a 97-pounder. I mean, down at 84, I've watched him so much, I can't picture a 184-pound Trent Hidley anymore. I mean, he just looks so natural at 197. And both these guys have been bonus point machines. They have just destroyed anybody that's gotten in their way this year. So I think of the weights, Nick, you look at it, this to me appears to be a clear 1 versus 2 collision course. We've talked about a lot of fire in the middle and some of the other weights, but yeah, the way that Brooks is going and the way that Hidley is wrestling, I think it's cool how, one went up, the other followed, and here we go again. I think we're going to be treated Saturday night to a fun one with these two. I mean, Hidley has opened up his offense. It's always been the underhook. That's what Popolizio loves. That's what Trent Hidley and his brother Hayden made a living on, those powerful underhooks. And sure, you feel it when he gets in there, but he's opened up his offense a little bit. And we all know what Brooks does. I mean, these are 2 of the best, no matter pound for pound, and there can only be 1. So it is, like I said, I sound like a broken record, but man, these are those lines, these storylines we started this conversation with. Yeah, Penn State appears to be the clear favorite on the team front, but man, we're going to have some really terrific individual battles leading up to Saturday night.
So I'll leave you here with this one, Shawn. Just it is a 2-parter, but you mentioned how, again, we broken record, right? Penn State going to run away with it, maybe hit the scoring record depending upon how all these guys finish, how many national champions they get, because they're basically at this point inevitable, as we like to say. So you look at Penn State, they're the de facto number 1. We'll see how good they are in this tournament. What team to you is going to make a run that we should be looking at that you have to watch out for, again, you hate to say it's a race for second, but what team is really going to you think is going to stand out this weekend? And then as far as individuals are concerned, is there one individual from either a big program or a smaller program that we should really be looking out for at any weight class this weekend?
You know what I'm most fired up about, to be completely honest, and Rock, he knows this, and anybody who works with me, I'm a heavyweight guy. I like the big guys. And I think this year at heavyweight, we have seen a progression in this weight class throughout the years as far as the style of wrestling. And I look at this field this year, I think some of the most entertaining wrestling is going to come from heavyweight. With younger Bastida at Iowa State, I tell you what, I don't know, I'm sure you saw the match with Hendrickson in the Big 12 championship.
Oh, yeah.
What he was able to do, I mean, that's a 25-pounder. I mean, that's a type of 25-pound move that we're used to seeing. And we talked to Kevin Dresser earlier, and, Bastida had to alter his game plan a little bit because Wyatt just kept coming at him. And Bastida altered it a little bit. And those two, Hendrickson's a guy that I've always cheered for, the academy, the Air Force. I think this could be a good year for our service academies. I think Army has a chance at an All-American, Navy as well with their heavyweight. So I keep an eye on them, but I just think heavyweight first and foremost is the one that I'm really jacked to watch. I think it's going to be some high scoring. You're going to be scratching your head thinking, man, these are 65-pound moves that we're seeing from these huge beast. And so heavyweight would be the first answer to your question. Secondly, as far as a team to keep an eye on, I'm going to give you a few. Cornell, I think, is healthy, loaded, prime, ready to get back another team trophy for a second straight year. I think they're one to keep an eye on. Iowa State, fresh off the Big 12 championship. I think they have the sheer numbers. If they can get Terakina and some of those lightweights and Evan Frost to score points, they have a chance to get in that mix. And then the ACC schools, I think either NC State or Virginia Tech, when you're talking about, non-Big Ten teams looking for one of those team trophies, I think one of those two will be there. Both have the full allotment, each team sending 10 wrestlers. A lot of that damage comes on that backside. How do those guys regroup after their first loss? Can they continue to score points through the consolations? And it all becomes a numbers game. And you got to have wrestlers. That's where the numbers start. And those teams I mentioned all have the numbers to really, I think, inflict some damage and come away with some hardware.
Yeah, you mentioned the backside part of the brackets across all the weight classes. For the newer wrestling fan, that seems to be where the magic can really happen. All the drama can really unfold behind the scenes, quote unquote.
The blood round Friday night, a lot of people draw those semis, but I'm always dialed in on that because, man, that's where you see the blood, sweat, and tears and how much a guy loves the sport. And that to me is one of the most powerful moments of the 3 days.
Boy, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. Shawn, I appreciate the time, my man. I can't wait to get out to Kansas City as well. So we'll see you out there, and thanks for your time.
Hey, appreciate it, Nick. See you there.
Shawn Kenney of ESPN with me right here on 3 Sports.